Welcome to Insachtilinquicatl. This is a podcast about poetic thinking where we share with you a different perspective of the social world. Every episode, we take a topic or a concept and we use the lens of philosophy, psychology, mythology, and art to analyze the wonderful horrors of the modern world. Welcome back. It took us a while to release a new episode, but we're happy to be back and we will continue to produce this podcast. My name is Andrea Martinez.
My name is Andrea Celeste. And today we are going to talk about endings and beginnings because it's still January, the month of Janus, god of endings and beginnings. These concepts constantly define our history and our personal lives, from claiming the end of history, the end of modernity, to the beginning of a new year, such as we are in the past 30 days claiming so. We are constantly trapped in ever-ending cycles. Nina Simone sang, "It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life." But how so, Nina? How
Or,
so?
or is it so?
Yeah,
And
or is it so?
these terms, the importance of these terms we see in everyday life, from pop culture to politics. We talk about the beginning of a regime, the end of a presidency. We talk about the end of the pandemic. 2021 is going to be a new year of people where initially, maybe some of them still are hopeful that it will be better than last. We think about birthdays in our personal lives, end of an era, end of a period of time, end of a marriage, end of childhood or adulthood. And these thresholds mark our lives sometimes or define them. Some of these endings and beginnings have been socially constructed, and some of them feel more natural. So today we're going to talk about how and why is it that these terms become so important in our society and our personal lives. We're going to explore three questions today. We don't offer answers, we offer thoughts, reflections. So our first question today is, why are we as people are so fascinated by the end of things?
I'm going to steal the word. I think it will definitely have to do with when we realized our own demise. And in terms of mythology, which is religious thought, that problem has been there since the beginning, since we realized death. That the before the time we realized death, in most mythologies, we know as the golden era. It was the era where we used to feast with the gods, where we were equals to the gods. And then it's the fall of men. That's usually how it's called, because it also has to do with the beginnings of rational thought, which is the beginning of everything. And it's completely influenced by this realization of our own death, that we are not forever, and then when someone dies, we ask, like, and then what, and then what happened, and then we left the golden years. so but
And we came up with some answers, I assume, to what
yeah,
happened.
we did. And well, that's the beginning of religion as well. It has completely to do with this, because religion, as a word, is related to linking. It's how you relate everything. You relink. It comes from the Latin religar, which means relate, sort of like relate, to make a relation between all of the things, because all of the things are related. And in that sense, life and death are related as well. Um, so this becomes a very important thought for our first reflections of this subject. And I would definitely have to stop by Egypt and the Book of the Dead, because that is one of the main products, not products, creations of literature, or religious literature, and it's about that, about dying. It's a book for the dead. Allegedly, they who read this are already dead, and they're going to put all these contours that they know into motion. But it's a book that you know, so when you die, you know how to proceed.
And so,
So
how do
in
we proceed according to Egypt once we die?
oh, we do a lot of stuff, a lot of stuff. It's a book of
It won't be boring when I die.
hundred of conjurations. Well, they're all conjurations, which is that's
Okay.
what's so important. It also links. It's I mean, it's filled with magic and religion in this sense. It's the word used as conjuring in terms of my well-being, because that's what magic thought has comes from. It comes to give me the fantasy that I have control over this. So
Right.
if I just do these conjures and follow and believe and what have you, I will go to the land of the happy few or the happy. This concept of they with the happy destiny, which
The
is a concept
chosen
in various
destiny.
religions. That yes, the chosen destiny with have it, and that comes when you die. So this is also found in Christianity, but its origin, I would say, it's more to do with Egypt and with this first division of the world. So, in that term, Egypt is also the origin or one of the origins where we find the beginning of scatology, or what we
Right.
know also as scatological thought.
So, what is the meaning of eschatology for those of us who forgot from the previous episodes?
The meaning of scatology, well, it's a part of theology that is concerned with death and, in general, the ending of things.
And so,
That means our own death and the death of the universe. Yes, sorry.
no, so eschatology, from what I know, but I'm sure you will tell us more about it, is particularly a particular characteristic of certain cosmogonies, ancient cosmogonies. So, from what the little bit of research that I did for today is that we have two types of cosmogonies: linear or circular. And when you have circular cosmogonies, they're more about cycles, whereas when you have linear ones, they're more concerned with the end of times and with judgment day, and this what you were talking about in terms of controlling your own destiny of what will happen to you after we die.
Well, I would say that both, yes, to linear and circular cosmogonies, and also you find this need of control in both, because the circular cosmogony that is more related, for instance, with sacrifice, particularly human sacrifice, which means like once I sacrifice, I give the most sacred to the gods, this will set off again the cycle, right? It will cleanse. This is what we have to do now, and this will just set off this cycle. Which this is the cosmogony you find in Crete, for instance. The Cretans, which are very influential to the Greeks, don't really believe that there is death. It's just this life that's indestructible, and your own death, your body rots and gives more life, I mean. So there's really no real death. You just become your flowers. And they truly religiously believed on this premise.
Can I
And
ask you
yeah.
if the Aztec cosmogony is a linear or one of the circular ones? Just thinking about sacrifice of human sacrifice.
Well, in the end, they also talk about the end of bigger cycles. You also have those cosmogonies that are in their own cycle is inside a bigger cycle, which is what you find in the um, Odin and the Nordics.
All right.
In
Okay.
Norse mythology,
Mhm.
you know, it's this when Fenrir takes over, that's going to be the end of the era of Odin, for instance. So in the end, I would say it's the beginning, it's the end, it's the beginning, it's the end. So and I'm spoiling the joke for our listeners of the whole chapter. But the Aztecs, for instance, if I'm not wrong, they believe in this like concentric circles,
Mhm.
like the Mayans, that it's their cycle, and then that's gonna end, and something else is gonna begin. Not so much as when I die, I mean, they do have the netherworld, of course, and that is also part of a scatological influence in them, because if you're drowned, you go to the netherworld of Tlaloc, for instance, which is different than if you were burned by fire. Then you go to another netherworld. Um, so you do find variety. It's not so much as only linear or only circular, but there are only
Okay.
linear and only circular, and because that's how this world is made of opposites. And in that sense, Christianity, for instance, is one of the main scatological religious of our time. It's the scatological religion of our time. It's mixed with a lot of stuff that comes from Egypt, even because what I was saying before about this, the Book of the Dead, etc. It's the beginning of scatology as well. It's
Mhm.
not here. It's the sense of not here. It's over there. That's the real mystery. My real task is to get over there. The interesting thing about Christianity, though, is that it becomes not only the place of the hero, for instance, which is what we find in Norse mythology or in the Aztecs as well, in all of these very vitalist civilizations that were driven by many other things, as such as human sacrifice. But there are many. I mean, Christianity is based completely on your moral, like on your moral compass, and how good you are. And that becomes because you must be like Christ, you must be Christ-like. And the understanding of what being Christ-like is has been the dilemma for centuries, that has translated into just into this be good to thy neighbor, but this weird version of Christianity where the pro-lifers don't care about kids that need adoption, you know? So
But I mean, Christianity, the eschatology of Christianity has very much to do with, like you were saying, in terms of the control of my life, the control of, like, if I control my morals according to the scriptures or whatever, then I control the end of me. The end, and the mystery is no longer a mystery, right? So I give meaning to my entire life by saying, by acting in a way that is meant to be ideal, so that at Judgment Day I'm one of the ones that gets to go party with Jesus.
well, yeah, that's a dilemma. What to do in terms of Christian in Christian thought? It's what's the action? Like it's an actual huge question about what to do in my day-to-day life, because the good work has so many interpretations that some of us might say, well, the good work is to live your life fully, and then when Jesus comes in his second coming, he will choose me because I knew what to do with my life. I was a seed, and I took care of myself as the seed I am, and I grew to be,
And I
you know,
intoxicated myself with
yeah, I
pleasure.
intoxicated myself with pleasure and life and realized that I am the other and whatnot. And Jesus, of course, is going to say, yeah, you come forever to live with me. But
But the
all of this that I just
evangelicals
said, yeah, the
disagree.
evangelicals wouldn't want to get intoxicated with us.
The evangelicals would disagree with the Unitarian Church, and the Unitarian Church disagrees with. So, of course, the interpretation of who is going to get to party on Judgment Day varies. But it's like the apocalypse, the meaning of the word of the word apocalypse from the Greek is revelation,
Yeah.
right? So it's actually the antidote to the mystery of what happens after the end of times.
Well, because allegedly that when you a revelation comes after you've encountered the mystery. So it does kind of make sense in terms of the end, because then you will be revealed what it is that we've been saying that's gonna happen. You know, that we also have plenty of imagery around, from sound to pictures to moving pictures regarding this apocalypse subject.
Right. And in a way, I like the revelation, or the end of that mystery, the revelation of that meaning brings about the end of mundanity. It justifies for the Catholics the endured
Christians.
suffering, or the Christians, the endured suffering, the everyday uh, numbness, or the everyday routine or void that we feel will then be justified. Our sacrifices will
Yes,
be
the
justified.
fantasy behind this for the evangelicals, well, for Christians, but a particular sect of, is that you will be reborn in heaven as the best time of your life. Like, you get to choose when you feel was the best time of your life, and that's when that's it. Well, this thought has actually, we can relate this, because this has to do with the good fortuned ones, so that I was the chosen one that I was
Mhm.
saying in terms of the Egyptians. That, for instance, for the Greeks, those fortunate ones are related with memory. Like, if you remember, if you know and you remember always this notion that, for instance, there is no real beginning or end, you won't be resented with your life, and you won't become demonic.
Mhm.
You will be in harmony with the other, because the demon separates things. So in a way, this part of this religious thought that we can trace to the Cretans, it has to do with this. Like, if you always remember that there is no real life or death, that we're just in this huge process of becoming of becoming not only us but the universe, then you won't be so resented of where you are in life, which is also kind of confusion.
Okay. Okay.
I
This is
would like only just to point in terms of history, or historic line, which also would show how scatological we are,
Mhm.
uh, which we live by a historical line. So in terms of that line, we find this scatology in Egypt, of course, 1,000 years back, but most importantly in Manichaeism.
Mhm.
Manichaeism has a lot to do with this. So it's part of these Gnostic sects that arise in the second, third year of our era. Year of our well, no, like, yeah, 300 years in our timeline.
And eschatology, just as has been like a defining in terms of religious thought, it has also been secularized into science. So we not only now think of the world and Judgment Day, but we think of the end of the planet. And we think, well, the end of the planet, actually, in terms of environmental activism, is not new in terms of scientifically thinking about the end of times, but we also thought about the end of the world through the Cold War and through nuclear war. So there's always been like a panic regarding when is our society, when is human life going to come to an end. And for those of you who are a bit older than millennials, you will remember the panic about Y2K,
Yeah.
that everything was going to collapse. All the computers weren't going to know what to do, and like everything was going to shut down. And I mean, This kind of like panic-inducing media frenzy narratives have always been around. They're just taking a different route, which is the route of science. And but I think, so yeah, go on.
Actually, George Steiner would tell you that they are precisely religious panic, but
Of
that
course,
this secularization is a lie. There
of
is no
course.
such thing. So it's just this our religious drive constantly.
Yeah, it's a dogma. It's a dogma that now has been embellished by science, but it's not like we haven't actually changed our way of thinking. And I think here the criticism, my favorite criticism of both eschatology and the planet is going to end and thou shall not eat animals or animal products,
Oh yeah.
is anti-humanism. Anti-humanism stands in opposition to humanism. Humanism believes that the world is better by the presence of human beings, that we are going to bring progress to the world. And well, that's a belief. I
I
don't know.
would say that it's part of belief in humanism itself, but not the core.
Oh no, it's not. Well, it's not the core. The core of humanism is like
Speaking as a humanist.
it's one of the characteristics in terms of also how we believe that the humans are the superior species, and
Oh, right, right,
it's
right.
also
I hate that.
partly
I hate that. Yes, it's true.
anthropocentrism, right? That the
Yeah.
world revolves around us. Now, I think it was Grimes who
Oh,
whose last album was called Anthropocene.
yeah.
Anthropocene. Anthropocene is the concept that now our impact on the Earth is so big, like
That
geologically,
we are
that
an
we can
era.
whether we are an era. Well, um, I don't need to tell you that is a theory, not a fact.
Yeah.
Um, but so anti-humanism, and here I'm quoting specifically John Gray. He wrote a quite fascinating book called Straw Dogs, where he tries to take down the beliefs of humanism. And of course, humanism is everywhere. Humanism is in politics, in human rights, in ethics, in bioethics, in religion. Like everybody is like wants to claim to be a humanist, and I am not going to do that. Uh,
Okay.
as humanists, people believe that they control their fates, and we do not.
Oh no.
Um, we believe in progress, and we believe that we can free ourselves from the limits that frame the lives of animals. And anti-humanism claims that those limits are not for us to deconstruct. We cannot take them down. We cannot overcome them. Um, in fact, this fear of death that we have, this fear of our end of times, of the end of times, and this obsession with the end of times, has to do with the fact that we are the only ones that resist the passing of time. Um,
That resists our destiny, which is death.
which is the passing of time. So we
Yeah.
make death and suicide and the end of times and Judgment Day into a moral issue,
Dilemma. Yeah.
into a moral dilemma.
Actually, Christianity is it's the strongest um, paradigm that bans suicide, and it bans suicide because you can't stop you when you kill yourself, you stop adoring God. So
Right.
it's an act against God. But this is a Christian thought mainly. It's not a pagan thought. Actually, in these Gnostic sects, Manichaeism, particularly Catharism, they believe in suicide as a means to get to the higher God, which is, it's not Jesus. There's a higher God. It's not even Jesus' daddy. Those are part of the demon vision that was sent to us. We have to, and suicide is a way of getting there. This is from pagan times. This comes before Christianity, and it's one of the things that came to big influence Christianity also in terms of passion. Because if you want to kill yourself, well, the thing is, you mustn't if you love God. So this becomes this is a part of the beginnings of Western passion as
And
well.
it continues until now. This like, well, the idea either that suicide is to be condemned by either psychiatry and
Oh yeah.
religion, or that suicide is a privilege to human beings. That is something that we alone do as beings, as creatures, which is also not the case. Uh,
I there's a book, sorry, there's a book called Carl. I just want to summarize my my opinion on suicide, and it's
we're
a
gonna
book.
come back to suicide. We're gonna come back.
I know, but I'm seeing the future. Carl Hart that has this book that's called Drug Use for Grown-ups. I would say my book would be Suicide for Grown-ups.
Yes, cool. And you should publish it in Switzerland. They would be okay with that. Um, and just to close this kind of criticism of progress, we want in the West, in Western culture, we want to justify everything by calling it progressive. The
Oh.
progressive liberals, in the name of progress, right? The progress of society.
In the name of liberty, all of these wars. In the name of peace, all of these wars.
And that is meant to be bringing us forward. And then again, in itself, it's a construct. We have gained knowledge about things in the world, but our needs haven't changed. Our ethics haven't changed. We are not better now than we were 500 years ago ethically. Or like, we still need the same things.
Yeah, and in that sense, well, we must jump to Freud and his yes.
Before we jump to Freud, I just want to say that in the name of progress, we claim that action is the best way. We must be activists. We must act. This is what kind of like a left wing or Instagram, quotes like, action
But
is
it's
the
also
important.
it becomes also acting activism as your personal brand, which in our
Right.
world, in terms of prophelicity, uh,
This is a
well,
shout out to Professor Hans-Georg Muller, who um, writes about prophelicity. We'll hopefully have him on the show for an interview sometime 2021.
but anyway, I mean, also this action as your brand for your profile, for your personal branding. That's also, well, terribly funny, I guess. It
It's about identity. Like
yeah,
a profile is about identity, and it's not necessarily, it's not progress.
yeah, it's not
It's
progress
just
exactly.
action. And if you look at Chinese philosophy in terms of Taoism, you'll see that actually inaction, non-interference, what it's called Wu Wei, is actually the
Best
course
way to
to
go.
the course to take instead. Um, I'm just gonna read a quote from John Gray. It's very just one sentence. It is not the idle dreamer that escapes from reality, but the practical men and women who turn a life of action as a refuge from insignificance. And now we can go to Freud.
This is perfect words to start with Freud, which also George Steiner said that the whole psychoanalytic school built by Freud was an attempt by Freud of fill the place of religion in the Western world that religion had failed to fill because there is no control of this. So, but he does underline how Freudianism, we can say, as well as Marxism, have this core myth to themselves that want in the end want to interact with us more as a religion, that this claims our need for this, even though they're very scientific, both of them, economical wise, and in terms of
Materialism,
psychology and
very materialism.
neuroscience,
Mhm.
but they're not. They're just echoes of this thing as well. So Freud, the Freudian myth concerning the birth of the defense mechanisms and the death drive, and the erotic drive, is precise. He asks of us in Beyond Pleasure Principle. If you haven't read it, he asks of us for an exercise of our imagination, and he says, imagine the first thing that came to life, the first thing that lived. What did it do, this first thing that lived? And he resolves, well, it died. The first thing it did was to die. But once the erotic drive was set by this cosmic drive, impulse, instinct, well, life didn't stop happening. So this thing, and this is also could be the beginnings of collective unconscious, but he would never dare admit to this. Um, the cell, this first cell that lived, starts to notice every time it comes back in all of these coming backs that there is one thing, and it is death.
Mhm.
That it lives to die. And what becomes the first action, like, and also sets the first defense mechanism, that is regression, which is that after you are traumatized, you go back to an earlier stage of your development, whatever it is. So in this sense, death is a regression. So you live and then you die because you couldn't handle. Um, so when life acknowledges that there is nothing else but to die, instead of just coming to die, what sets in nature, according to Freud, is I will die by my own means. I know that I will die, but I will die by my own means. And this, he says, happens in every level of life. I, this is why, even though this is why you will find animals that are completely transformed in the, or humans that are in our posture or whatever, and then you
Mhm.
can see like all of the hurt and all of the everything, the trauma that has gone through that thing, but still there it is,
You made me
living.
think of I
Wait,
don't
I
know.
will just I will just finish this. So what he says that is very interesting, and it's also very sinister, is that um, the defense mechanisms of the ego, of I, are related to the death drive.
Right.
They
And
wouldn't like the, yes, sorry.
we're go and we'll return to the death drive both in this episode and in the next one, because we're going doing a two-part episode about death and death drives and Eros and Thanatos, the next one. But so when you were talking about Freud, in terms of the cell understanding that it will live and it will die, not as a realization, but as an understanding, and not necessarily in the theological sense, but it lives and it dies. It reminded me of Shakespeare's opening uh, speech of As You Like It. It talks about the seven stages of man.
Mhm.
And I was going to read the last verse and whistle, the last verse, sorry. That ends this strange, eventful history in second childishness and mere oblivion, sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything.
And who's the character that says that?
You tell me.
If I'm not mistaken, it's the fool.
Oh, okay. Um, let's double check that very quickly.
A ver, páralo. Sí, otra vez, perdón.
Pues es que no sé, yo esas se las pongo a mis alumnos
No, está
para.
muy bien.
So is the fool
Yeah,
Jax.
and that's what's important of being the fool, is that the fool is he who in all his craziness is perhaps so crazy, so foolish, because he understands that
Right.
this
And
is
but
the
like I mean in Shakespeare, but also again I'm going to return to uh Asian Chinese philosophy, which is the fool is often used as an example of the one who understands.
Yeah,
It is us who are
the fools,
progressive, us who are like aiming at action and activism, who are not understanding.
the fools.
Yeah. So okay, so some would say Heidegger is the fool, and some would say Heidegger is not the fool. I kind of sit in between the fool and not the fool with Heidegger. Heidegger talks about, and we're doing Freud and then Heidegger in that chronological order. Second section of Being and Time, he talks about one of his main concepts of being towards death. So just like Andrea was talking about, Freud, one lives and one dies, and there is this death drive and this understanding of that is destiny. If there is one thing that is true about our being, is that it will die. And from a more humanist approach rather than an anti-humanist one, Heidegger will say that human beings, or as he calls them, Dasein from the German being there. Human beings are uh, what they are in terms of that they are always contextualized. And one of the characteristics of who we are is that we comprehend that we will die. And our relationship with death is problematic because, again, like in Christianism, we don't understand what happens afterwards. So our entire existence, and not our entire like survival or not our entire lives, but our entire existence, the question of our existence lies on the fact that I will die. And so how will I relate to that fact? And the foolishness in Heidegger, I would say, is that he has an answer. He has an answer to, we can relate to that authentically or inauthentically, and we can, well, like simplifying Heidegger a
Oh,
lot
that's
of,
so easy, Heidegger. To
well,
be or
it's easy. And then, it took him, I think it's 800 pages to
no, no, I mean, how it's not easy at all to be authentic. Like, what do you mean by this?
Heidegger does draw this dichotomy of authentic and inauthentic being. And for Heidegger, the way to engage authentically with death is to make plans around the fact that, not around, but to plan in acknowledging that we will die.
Yeah, and in that term, in that sense, I mean, this authenticity has a lot to do with what the Greeks called bios. Like, you must come here to discover that you have a life,
Right.
your true life.
Mm-hmm.
And your true life is completely linked to how you die. So you have to own your death.
Right. And that is what he means, that there is something that is there to be owned about our deaths, and that we encounter that alone as beings. And there is, of course, something that is undeniable, sorry, undeniable about that. um I guess I only question his dichotomy of, what does it mean to be
To be authentic. That's why
authentic.
it's so weird, like the way he phrase the word he chooses. It's a problematic word,
Right.
like his life choices.
And this just reminded me of one more poem, since we are talking about poetic thinking. I'm just going to quote, in terms of this being towards death, Dylan Thomas. um Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light, which is, of course, in the movie Interstellar, uh, used not only in terms of space, but in terms of the death of the father.
Yeah.
So there is this, like, I mean, it's the end of us as society. And we have, like, in this terms of like the space, in our relation to space and the end of humanity, we have Armageddon and like all these movies, like Interstellar itself as an end of the planet, as the end of the planet.
Yeah, and in the end, like there's also not in the well, and in the end, but
In the
sort
end,
of, um,
this is the end, my
this
friends,
is
the
the
end.
end. But what I mean of Interstellar is that it has to do with also encountering with the mysterious. It's the mysterious thing. Like in the end, you don't know. I mean, yes, he is the ghost, but who 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 put it there? How did it get there? We still don't know everything. Like if it's all just theoretical physics.
But Interstellar again, like I mean, and this is again the humanist's flaw, and this is why I was trying to criticize Heidegger about this, is that everything has to have a meaning. Our time has to have a meaning in the grand scheme of things. And so Interstellar makes that meaning because Matthew McConaughey comes back and like saves the
I
day or
love
whatever.
him.
Have you seen him with Jordan Peterson?
Not with him, but I saw him talking about Jordan Peterson, and
He loves
I know he
JP.
loves Jordan Peterson. Yes, yes, yes. Uh, oh, you send me the link. Well, yeah.
Anyway,
So,
we can
uh,
talk about Jordan Peterson some other time, not today.
make your beds.
Right. So we are talking about how we deal with personal death, and this was our second question for today, which we are already kind of exploring, which is how do we deal with our personal ending? Heidegger says, deal with it authentically.
But this is ancient knowledge. I mean, this is what in various pagan sects, and it's in Midsommar, actually, in the movie Midsommar. That's exactly what it's all about.
Mhm.
Well, not only that, but it touches that subject, which is okay. When you are 72 in many of these sects, and you can read this in the Golden Bough, um, when you're 72 or near that age, that's it. One goes to the woods, does its thing, or precipitates himself, herself
You throw yourself into the
towards,
abyss.
yeah, to the
Into
abyss,
the
the
abyss.
throwing, which is exactly what freaks out the Americans that are visiting this very well neo-pagan um, sect. And
Right.
well, for all of you that have seen that movie, uh, that girl has found her place, and she's going to stay in this circular cosmogony until she dies, because finally life made sense,
Right. Um,
So yeah,
yeah, go on.
no, no, nothing.
Well, I mean, and Midsummer is like depicts this voluntary suicide, which I've been looking into for the show, not for myself.
Oh, and they're
As
intoxicated also. They I mean, or in God.
right.
Would- yes, I mean, these people that did these sacrifices.
Well, I mean, Midsummer has two I think two strings to pull. One is the string of cults, and the other string to pull is that of assisted suicide. So I'm going to pull the string of assisted suicide, and if you don't know, Belgium and Switzerland are the only two countries that allow for, I think some parts of Australia as well, but in Europe, the only two countries that allow for assisted legal suicide. Belgium just for nationals, and Switzerland allows for anybody to have an application with enough evidence that you are in deep emotional and or physical pain which cannot be helped,
Relieved.
aided,
Uh-huh.
that you can apply for assisted suicide. And of course, the question that, like, I mean, this cannot happen in traditionally Catholic countries, right? Because um
Christian.
yeah, in traditionally Christian countries, because thou, like, God says.
Judaism also. Judeo-Christian.
And I was watching one documentary that's called Personal Stories or something like that, and they follow
Hinduism, I would have to check. Sorry.
I don't know. um I don't think so.
I don't
I
I
don't
would
think so.
think they don't allow you to suicide because
Right.
you can't mingle with that's action.
Right. And so in one of these documentaries that I was watching, they have, I mean, you have like a variety of people who are looking for assisted suicide. Some of them have like deep emotional psychological disorders, and that's why they want to bring their life to an end. And that tends to be a lot more controversial. And then there are those who are terminally ill. And I really like the argument that this man makes. So he's diagnosed with motor disease, something
A terrible disease.
your body slowly stops being able to move,
A
including your
terrible
lungs, on
disease.
your eyelids and everything, and eventually you die. But it's like kind of like within a cage, right? It's just your mind that is functional. One of these terrible diseases. And so not very late in the progress of his disease, he decides that he's going to apply for suicide. And so, of course, they interview him and ask him why, and he says, well, I know in some places God says that this is not allowed, this is not moral, because you should allow God to do its thing. But we don't allow God to do its thing, if you're going to take that perspective. When you save premature babies, when you put people on respirators, you don't allow God to do its thing. So I'm not allowing God to do its thing by going
Yeah.
for suicide, but neither are you.
Well, what the religions that or the thought, not religion, because like the justification behind the thought of suicide is also, or can be also, that I am God. In that way, I choose to do this.
Right.
And I just would want to say one more thing in terms of the dying, that um, in Orphism, which is another very important religion in the Greek world, that is where Orpheus is its main prophet, the first poet of our world. The hero is the word hero is most likely to be linked in origin to the dead. The dead is the first hero because is he or she that will encounter the mystery. And that is why the heroes in the heroic age are so towards dying, because the phrase dying towards Hades
Mhm.
was a very popular phrase in terms of heroism, which is what we were saying about owning your own death. So in that sense, these sects also revolved around, well, be your own, well, this thought, not these sects, this thought revolves around taking control your own life is heroic to yourself. It is also saving yourself.
Right.
Do I make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, just going back to the assisted suicide thing, and like, this debate whether, it's taking control or allowing God, or what does it mean to allow God. Um, and, going back to Midsommar as well, is, I suppose, sometimes the question is also, and it's a controversial question, right? It's like, should I be here? And it's also the question that Camus asks
Yeah.
in the myth of Sisyphus, right? Like, the ultimate question is the question of suicide. And Camus, of course, in a very like humanist way, says, the brave thing to do is not to commit suicide. But the question also can be, uh, should I remain here and live a worthless life? As a terminally ill patient, or, whatever you deem worthless. And then what is the
Mhm.
definition of worthlessness? Or should I take this into my own hands, so to speak? Um, and I mean, we have no answers. We just have examples such as Deleuze, who threw himself out of a window because when he was really, really sick. So there's that.
Yeah, Virginia Woolf that drowned.
Drowned. So there's always those options before Switzerland, before applying to Switzerland. And I guess another perspective in terms of this life and death, personal death, that is not humanist and that is not Heideggerian or Freudian or religious, would be, again, going back to Taoism. Um, the most famous tale of the Chuangzi, which is a Taoist book, um, is about the butterfly and the dream of Chuang Tzu and the butterfly. And so Chuang Tzu dreams that he is a butterfly. And the tale is like, there was Chuang Tzu, who is the man, and there was a butterfly. And there was a clear separation. This the text. Chuang Tzu dreamt that he was a butterfly, and the butterfly was flying wherever it wanted, over here and over there, and didn't preoccupy itself with Chuang Tzu. When Chuang Tzu wakes up, he doesn't know, or no, but it's not known whether it is Chuang Tzu dreaming that he was a butterfly or whether it was the butterfly dreaming that it was Chuang Tzu. And the point of the tale is not just in terms of waking life and sleeping and dreaming, but the point of the tale is also life and death. So, in a way, you do not know when you're living, there is no awareness of death. And therefore, we don't not know the existence that we will have after we die. Um, it can be an existence that is just as pleasurable as this one, or it may not be, but there is no way for us to know. So there is no reason to obsess on it, because just as the
Mhm.
butterfly doesn't think about Chuang Tzu doesn't think
Doesn't
about the
know. Mhm.
butterfly. So in this way, Taoism is not an eschatological, making meaning out of the afterlife or the life that is not this one. So that is another response to the question of how to face our own death, our own finality.
So in this ending problem, in the problem of the end, also, um, Umberto Eco, in his book Apocalyptics and Integrates, theorizes about two types of character in our age, and he does talk about our millennialism, what we call, being millennial. Well, it was 86, so he doesn't refer itself as millennial, but he does say, like, we are sort of in the same times as the millennial of the first millennialists,
Mhm.
that were so concerned that they thought that the apocalypse time was actual real time, that it meant that 1,000 years after the first coming of Christ we will die, and that the apocalypse is going to occur and what have you. So he says, so near this other century, so near the Y2K, he says there's two types of character, of peoples now, and he links this to industrial revolution and capitalism. There are the apocalyptics that actually would be us as well, because he doesn't set a third option. That, well, um, pleasure themselves or ourselves in understanding that our lives are miserable and there is no progress, and before was better in so many ways and whatnot. And the integrates that have swallowed the pill and are just fine with whatever it is capitalism is offering to us. So
Right.
in this sense, this
Is that
relates.
the pill of progress?
Well, yeah, and of the matrix, of what, like, the apocalyptics live the fantasy that they're not in what we would call, post 2000s, what
Right.
we would call in the matrix.
Right.
And in the end, what Umberto Eco says, you're all part of this matrix, and people that are dying now perhaps knew kind of another world, which is also would label himself as an apocalyptic, because he would
Right.
be praising the past more than the future.
Of course.
But yes, this in if we look around us, also with the pandemic, and even before the pandemic,
And like, I
was
mean,
like,
this whole like American, like Trump is going to bring the end of us, and like, this very like, I mean, the American narrative is always completely eschatological. right?
Oh yeah, all of their sects of the ninth of all the 20th century, they have to do with suicidal sects because the end is coming.
Right. And we have
And
also,
that means a new beginning. And that means a new beginning for them. So that's why the
yes,
wacko
and that's
people
why
come up.
Elon Musk wants to go and populate Mars or whatever, right? Because it's
Yeah,
the
but he should
beginning.
just give us money here and feed people
And
here.
feed
Fuck
people.
Mars.
And oh, so just to give an example of that, you can find these videos as well on YouTube of this the largest bunker community in South Dakota in the States is called Vivos X Point, and they are like, you know, I mean, they are millions and millions of dollars. There's like bunkers where people are going to go and hide, and people have bought them and owned them, and they're gonna go and hide there at when the end is here. And you know, so and like there's companies like investing in this.
Oh yeah, well, the just life insurance. Life insurance has everything to do with this.
Right in the
What will happens when it happens?
yes.
You
um
must be insured. Yeah, whatever.
and in this same tone, we have also the rise of more messianic figures such as Donald Trump for some groups, the QAnon conspiracy theorists, but also on the other side we have little Greta Thunberg, who has become, you
Oh,
know,
and our Mexican president.
and our Mexican president, you know, like the end of times, like the end of the planet is coming, and like you know, I am the one who is coming to tell you this is how we save ourselves, and like
Which
that.
is, yeah, sorry.
Go,
it's
please
it's
do
it
say.
just it means it brings it goes back to ritual, because we've always killed the young ones. We started eating the babies, and then we killed the ones that were brighter and hotter, and this girl is sort of the same thing, and this messianic figure of this linear cosmogony that will end this
She's the
when.
Messiah and the martyr as well. Like you know,
Mhm.
it's the same. Like the
It's a
anti-humanists
sacred,
say, we haven't
yeah,
changed. It's just the topic is different, but the themes, like the, you know, the underlying theme is the same.
yeah, which has to do with who has the truth about what happens when you die, or how we change our lives so we don't die, which is sort of, protecting the planet and whatnot.
There was a note yesterday from, well, a couple days ago, depending on where this when this podcast comes out, from Stephen Colbert about how the Chinese have found a way of increasing longevity by 25% in mice. And I was like, why do we need that? Like, I mean, is that still the thing? Are we still looking to be, instead of 100, 125? Like, okay.
Well, yeah, many people would say yes. I would say, okay, to all of these people that need to live 200 years, do that, go do that, and hopefully you will one day understand that the thing is that you're gonna die. I mean, I'm
Yes.
not saying that if tomorrow I get diagnosed, and I will touch wood, knock on wood, of some terrible disease, that I might not be okay with dying. But the truth is that there is little we can do about that, and we might just slip on the floor and crack our, skulls, and that was it, without much
Much
scatology
ado.
thought. Yeah.
And on that note, we'll bring this to the third and last question of the show, which is it a new dawn? Is it a new day? Is it a new life? And maybe it is, or maybe it isn't.
I think we will let Goethe answer Nina.
Okay, go on.
Uh, this happens at the threshold of a party. So the herald is letting people in and out of this party. It's a masquerade. And the herald says, "Come and go unwarily, for in the end, as in the beginning, the world with its thousand jests is but a fool."
And on that note, thank you for listening. This is Inshashtalinquicatl. Our next episode will be a bit of a continuation of this. We're still going to talk about death and suicide and life and pleasure. And happy beginnings and endings in 2021.